Saudi Arabia is the world's largest producer of desalinated water, where researchers have patented several technologies to extract minerals from water while protecting marine ecosystems from wastewater.
Right now, massive pumps are screaming as they push millions of gallons of water up the side of a mountain. This is not a sci-fi movie. This is the daily reality in the Saudi desert. They have built the longest freshwater pipeline network in history. It is a machine that keeps 30 million people alive. But getting that water from the salty coast to the deep desert requires engineering that breaks every rule in the book. And get this, the waste from this process is creating a whole new problem that no one saw coming: living on the edge of a dry cliff. Historically, the people here survived on ancient water hidden deep underground. These are called fossil aquifers. Think of them like underground lakes that were filled up thousands of years ago when the climate was different. Once you drink that water, it is gone. It does not come back. It is like a bank account where you can only make withdrawals, never deposits. For a long time, this was okay because the population was small, but then the country started to grow. Cities like Riyadh and Jeddah exploded in size, but the water infrastructure was stuck in the past. In the big cities, you could only get water once every few days, sometimes once a week. People had to store water in tanks and pray it lasted. You cannot build a modern economy if your people are thirsty.
This is the Jubail water desalination plant in Saudi Arabia. This massive facility carries the tag of being the world's largest. It makes more than 1.4 million cubic meters of water daily.
But the government made a huge mistake in the 70s. They decided they wanted to grow their own food, specifically wheat. They wanted to be independent. So they started pumping that precious underground water to irrigate crops in the middle of the desert. It was a disaster. They were draining their emergency water supply to grow food they could have just bought from somewhere else. The water levels in the aquifers dropped like a stone. It was scary. They eventually had to ban growing wheat because they were literally drinking their own future. But here is the catch. You need water for more than just farming. You need it to mix concrete for buildings. You need it to cool down power plants. Without water, the lights go out and the cranes stop moving. The government tried to tell people to save water. They handed out flyers, changed shower heads, and cut subsidies. It helped a little bit. Water use in Riyadh dropped by about a quarter, but it was not enough. The population was growing too fast. They needed a new source of water, and they needed it yesterday. They looked at the map and realized something. They are surrounded by water on three sides: the Red Sea and the Arabian Gulf. Millions of gallons of water just sitting there, but you cannot drink it. If you drink seawater, the salt will dehydrate you and eventually end you. It is a cruel joke of nature. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. So they had to do something radical. They had to take that poison water and turn it into life. They decided to build a river of steel. The desert was about to get its first man-made river. How they hacked the ocean. Making seawater drinkable is tough. It is not just about filtering out some dirt. You have to separate the water from the salt on a molecular level. Saudi Arabia did not have time to invent something brand new, so they went with what humans have known for centuries: boiling. If you boil salt water, the water turns into steam, but the salt stays behind. If you catch that steam and cool it down, you get fresh, pure water. It is simple science. You can do it in your kitchen with a pot and a lid, but Saudi Arabia needed to do this for millions of people. They needed to scale this up to a level that is hard to even comprehend. They call this thermal distillation. Basically, they built massive factories that act like giant tea kettles. They suck in seawater, boil it using oil or gas, and collect the fresh water. The first real attempt was back in 1907. They built a machine in Jeddah called the Al-Kandasa, which just means the condenser. It burned coal to pump out about 300 tons of water a day. That sounds like a lot, but for a city, it is a drop in the bucket. It helped, especially when pilgrims came to Mecca, but it was not a permanent fix. But it proved one thing: the ocean could save them. Fast forward to the 70s and 80s, and the construction went wild. They built plant after plant: Al-Waj, Duba, Khobar. These were monsters of engineering. By the year 2025, they had 33 of these massive plants running day and night. 8 on the Gulf Coast, 25 on the Red Sea. Together, they are pumping out over 5 million cubic meters of fresh water every single day. To give you an idea of how much that is, Saudi Arabia now produces 22% of all the desalinated water in the entire world. They are the kings of desal. The biggest one is Ras Al Khair. This place is a beast. It is the largest desalination plant on the planet. It sits there on the coast, humming loudly, turning the ocean into a river. But there is a problem with boiling water. It takes a ton of energy. Think about your gas bill if you left a pot of water boiling on the stove 24/7. Now multiply that by 1,000,000. These plants were burning oil and gas like there was no tomorrow. It was effective, sure. The water was clean. But it was expensive and it was dirty. They were burning their most valuable export just to get a glass of water. Plus, the hot water they dumped back into the ocean was causing issues. They knew they could not keep doing this forever. The oil would not last forever, and the pollution was getting bad. They needed a better way. A way that did not involve setting fire to billions of dollars of oil. They needed a new technology to save them. No heat, just pure pressure. So, here is the deal. Boiling water works, but it is like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. It is messy and takes too much effort. The engineers looked at a different way to do things. It is called reverse osmosis, or RO for short. This technology is like magic. Instead of using heat, it uses pressure, serious pressure. Imagine a filter with holes so tiny you need a microscope to see them. These holes are so small that water molecules can squeeze through, but salt molecules, bacteria, and viruses are too fat to fit. It is like a bouncer at a club who only lets the cool kids in. You take the seawater and you blast it at this filter with immense force. The fresh water pushes through to the other side, and the salty sludge stays behind. Why is this better? Because you do not need to boil anything. You just need electricity to run the pumps. It uses way less energy, it is cleaner, and it is modular. That means if you need more water, you just add more filters. You do not need to build a whole new boiler room. Saudi Arabia went all in on this. They built the Rabi 3 plant. This place is the heavyweight champion of reverse osmosis. It pumps out 600,000 cubic meters of water a day. That is enough to fill hundreds of Olympic swimming pools every 24 hours. They also have hybrid plants like Ras Al Khair that use both boiling and filters to get the best of both worlds. This switch to pressure-based cleaning changed everything. Suddenly making water wasn't burning a hole in the budget quite as fast. They were producing rivers of water more efficiently than ever before, but creating the water is only half the battle. In fact, it might be the easy part. The real challenge is geography. The water is on the coast. The people are in the middle of the desert, and between them are miles of burning sand and mountains that reach up to the clouds. How do you move a river uphill? You have to build the world's strongest veins, the engineering miracle of Riyadh. Most people do not realize how far inland Riyadh is. It is right in the center of the country. Getting water there from the ocean is a nightmare. In the old days, they used trucks. Imagine a convoy of water trucks driving hundreds of miles every day. It was slow, expensive, and frankly, ridiculous. They needed a pipe. But not just any pipe. They built the Riyadh water transmission system. This thing is a beast. It is a twin pipeline system stretching 290 miles. The pipes are 5 feet wide. You could crawl inside them, though you definitely would not want to. They are made of high-grade steel and lined with cement so the salt does not eat through them. Building this was like building a space station on the ground. The desert heat melts equipment. You cannot work at noon because the sun will literally cook you. Workers had to adjust their shifts, working at night or early morning. They had to dig trenches through solid rock and shift sand that moves like water. And it is not a flat line. The pipeline has to climb. We are talking about pushing water over mountains. They built massive pumping stations along the route. These pumps are like the heart of the beast, slamming the water with high pressure to shove it up cliffs and over dunes. It had to be a closed system. You cannot just dig a canal like the ancient Egyptians. If you put water in an open canal in the Saudi desert, the sun will drink it before it reaches the city. It would all evaporate. By keeping it in steel pipes, they do not lose a drop. Even if the water gets hot, the steam stays inside and turns back into water. This system was the blueprint. Once they proved it worked for Riyadh, they did it for the holy cities too. The Mecca TAFE system runs for 124 miles. It brings water to millions of pilgrims who visit Mecca. Without these pipes, the pilgrimage would be a logistical disaster. The numbers are just staggering. Today, Saudi Arabia has about 7,000 miles of these massive water pipes. If you laid them out in a straight line, they would stretch further than the Nile River. They connect 22,000 towns and cities. Some of these pipes climb as high as 9,800 feet. That is almost 2 miles up in the sky. Every single day, 16.6 million cubic meters of water rushes through these steel veins. It is a masterpiece of plumbing. But there is a catch. Moving that much heavy water uphill takes a lot of power. Those pumps are hungry. They needed a power source that wouldn't run out. Cleaning up the mess. Here is the uncomfortable truth about all of this. Desalination is expensive in terms of energy. Right now, Saudi Arabia uses nearly a quarter of its own oil and gas production just to make water. Think about that. They are burning their money to make water. By the year 2030, experts think they might use half their energy just for desalination. That is not sustainable. But that is not even the worst part. The worst part is what goes back into the ocean. When you take the fresh water out, you are left with a super salty, toxic sludge called brine. It is loaded with heavy metals, chemicals, and bacteria. It is nasty stuff. For a long time, plants just dumped this brine back into the sea. And because it is heavier than normal seawater, it sinks to the bottom. It sits there like a toxic blanket, sucking the oxygen out of the water. It creates dead zones. Fish, coral, seagrass, everything dies. It wipes out the entire ecosystem. The Red Sea is especially vulnerable because it is kind of enclosed. It does not flush out easily. If you keep dumping brine, the whole sea gets saltier and hotter. It is a slow-motion environmental disaster. But Saudi Arabia knows they cannot destroy the ocean they depend on. So, they are getting clever. They are starting to use something called zero liquid discharge. Basically, instead of dumping the brine, they evaporate the last bit of water out of it until they are just left with solid salt and minerals. And get this, that salt is valuable. It is full of lithium, magnesium, and calcium. Lithium is what we use for batteries in electric cars and phones. Suddenly, this toxic waste is a gold mine. They are turning a problem into a profit. They are also using better technology to mix the discharge back into the ocean so it dilutes quickly and does not eliminate the marine life. They are also tackling the energy problem. They are building massive solar farms. The Al-Khafji plant runs entirely on solar power. The sun boils the water. It is poetic, really. The sun, which makes the desert so dry, is now being used to bring water to the people. Saudi Arabia is trying to turn the whole system green. If they pull this off, they could turn the desert green too. They want to bring agriculture back. They want to be self-sufficient. They are doing what no one else has managed to do. They are fighting the desert and winning. But is relying entirely on technology to provide water a genius move or a dangerous gamble? What happens if the pumps stop? If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe for more engineering mysteries. Do you think we should be drinking the ocean? Let me know below.